Good afternoon, Desert Highlands members. Hope all is going well. We have included this original forum video for you, more for context and for informational purposes for those members who have not seen it yet. We had over 200 members attend the original forums and over 350 view this video. And since then, we've gotten a ton of great feedback from the membership, and we've made some modifications to the original recommendations. And you'll see that in the wording within this email that you've received that includes this video. But for context, we wanted to include this video and just make sure that you're aware as you view this video. There's a few areas like the wording for the CC&Rs where we reference 4 to 8%. Well, since we received your feedback, what you're actually going to be going to vote on is 3 to 7% as those guardrails from the median home price. So please be aware of that. The other area that you're going to see is management's original recommendation of $175,000 for the membership fee. The board has said that they're going to commit to not going over $150,000 for that. And once the CC&R votes do pass, if they pass, they'll have that conversation. But just for context, when you see that, it'll be $150,000 or not to exceed that. So please enjoy the video. If you have any questions, let us know. Please make sure to review all the other information within this email packet. There's an updated video with some of that information as well, so you can see what those new numbers look like. And I hope you have a great summer. Thanks so much and enjoy.
Well, welcome everybody. Really appreciate it. We're really excited to present some of our ideas and recommendations. Really the reason for this is to try to just provide more transparency. Let you know what management's thinking, what we're recommending to the board, get feedback. The nice thing is we did this yesterday, and so we got a lot of terrific feedback yesterday, which was terrific. So we've modified our presentation a little bit, so you get a little bit more information than maybe those yesterday. And then what we're planning on doing is taking one of these Zoom sessions and recording it, obviously, and sending it out to the membership who weren't able to make any of the in-person or live Zoom sessions. So anyway, thank you so much, and we'll get started. All I'd ask is that you keep yourself on mute. If you do have questions kind of during that you don't want to forget as we're going, feel free to enter them right into the chat box. And then this is kind of broken into a two-part session. What we're really going to do, the goals for today. Thank you. The goals for today are really to introduce our recommendations on some CC&R changes and really get your feedback on those. We're going to then ask a lot of questions on those CC&Rs, get what you're feeling on those CC&R changes and what take that feedback and take it with the other live sessions that we've had. Then we're going to explain some of the financial considerations, as well as what we're recommending for a membership fee to go to. And then again, kind of throughout, get your feedback so that we can hopefully go to a vote on these CC&R changes with a majority approval or mass majority. So thank you. Zoom can sometimes be awkward. Really appreciate everybody being here. Nick?
Good morning, Nick Gerstner, Chief Financial Officer, and I think it's really important when we're talking about CC&R changes to understand the financial model of DH and the community. And so our financial model has two specific ledgers, right? So we have the operating ledger. That's the $1,700 that you pay on a month-to-month basis. And we use those funds to deliver services and amenities. And so from a big picture basis, right, we're taking those funds, we're collecting them, we're using them on an annual basis, and that's to return, a break-even budget, right? So we're using those dollars up, and they cannot be used for any other reason than to fund services and goods and provide experience to members. And so that's not a main financial driver of our association. When we think about what drives the financial stability of our association, it really comes from the capital ledger side, right? That's the membership fee, right? And right now, the only source of capital funds is the membership fee. and that goes to replace, enhance, and improve assets. So the membership fee funds the capital expenditure plan. And we have a 30-year study of all the capital expenditure needs that we're funding with that membership fee. So let's just dive into a little bit of the history of home sales. So over the last 5 years, the community has sold roughly 40% of the homes, right? So that means 40% of our homes have changed owners, right? If you look at a 10-year analysis, we've sold roughly 70% of the homes. What is the risk in our capital funding model? Well, looking into the future, we've already sold 40% of the community. So the expectation that we're going to have those continued home sales is risky as our only source of capital income. When we look at how the last few years of home sales have been spent, they've been spent throughout our community to create great member experiences, right? So we've added Jack's Backyard, we've added bocce ball, we've added 2 pickleball courts. All of that type of capital was invested in without needing additional funds for members, right? The home sales have really funded that. When we look at our reserve cash position, right? 2 years ago in 2020, we had $147,000 worth of capital cash on hand available for expenditures. We had $1 million reserved for our road projects. As the chief financial officer, that gives me a little hesitation, right? Because we need capital funds to be on hand in case things happen, right? And so when we're looking to replace a mower or replace an HVAC unit, we need to make sure that we're not waiting on home sales in order to fund those types of capital expenditures. They're just ongoing needs that we have to continue to operate on a day-to-day basis. A pool heater goes down, right? Now we have an issue if we don't have the capital funds on hand in order to fund that. So as we're looking to this year's budget, we're going from ending 2022 with about $6.1 million in capital cash on hand to at the end of 2023 with $4.3 million in capital cash on hand. And so what is the reason there? Well, we're not anticipating home sales to continue at the rapid pace it has over the last 2 years. And so that leaves us with a cash deficit of capital expenditures for this fiscal year. So just going back to it, the variability in home sales creates volatility in membership fees collected. And the effect of that would be that current members are required to put more dollars into the association in order to just fund those ongoing capital needs that we have to replace all of the assets that we use in the operation, right? The plates, the napkins, or not the napkins, excuse me, the plates, the mowers, the blowers, the HVAC units. What do we expect out of these capital funds invested, right? Well, the objective is to have the capital funds invested in the association deliver a return to members through enhanced home values, which is what we've seen over the last couple of years with the additional enhancements to the Jack's Backyard and bocce ball and pickleball courts, right? So we've seen the max, the min, the median home value all increase in price relative to not only what's been going on in the housing market, but also based on our investment into the association. So there's 3 phases of focus, right? Desi and I came on board about a year ago, and in looking at our CC&Rs, we just want to make sure that we're communicating the things that we're seeing from a management perspective with the board and just communicating what each one of these things mean. So right now we're talking about the membership fee. If you attended the annual meeting, you heard our Vice President, Jay McDermott, give some information on the risk of our current capital model and the need for possibly a recurring capital dues based on the amount of home sales that we can collect. And then in spring of 2024, we're maybe talking about a major project assessment in order for the golf course renovation project to happen. So that would require a vote, right? So right now we're just laying the groundwork, talking about all the things that are on the table. in order to be transparent about what's coming down the road.
Yeah, and really, we really want to understand our membership fee and where the community feels like we should take this membership fee. We really need to understand that aspect. That's why it's number one on the list, and we're talking about first. Once we understand that membership fee and with what our forecasted sales are over the next several years, then we can really start putting focus on recurring capital dues, if we need reoccurring capital dues, et cetera. So that membership fee is really based on it being such a historical focus of our capital funding is the most important thing. And that's why we're having this conversation today.
So let's talk about the current wording of the CC&Rs. The amount of the membership fee shall be $95,000. It can change every 5 years, not to exceed CPI for that cumulative 5 years. The next time we can change the membership fee is in January of 2026. If we want to work outside of that change of January 2026, we have to have a vote of the membership.
Does everybody, hopefully everybody's seen these before and understands those. We don't want to skirt over this too quickly while people can read it. So if you just want to take a few seconds, make sure you've read it and understand it. But the challenge with these, as we move to the next slide, we can always come back here if you need, is again, they're not flexible. They're not flexible at all. It ties the entire community's hands. So as we see ebbs and flows in the market and the economy and our home values, we're basically stuck at the 95 without going to a vote. It requires a vote. As easy as it might sound to some to do a vote in a community of 560 plus homes, it's really difficult. You know, trying to get 290 members to vote yes on anything is difficult. And if you don't vote, if there's apathy out there and people don't care one way or another, in a sense, if they don't vote, that's a no vote. And so it is really time consuming and challenging to go to a vote, especially as you'll see later, other clubs with different wording are able to be dynamic and have really been able to take advantage of this market and increase their capital reserves significantly. And also it doesn't use data specific to Desert Highlands, right? CPI, it's great data and wouldn't say not to use it, but what you'll see later and what Nick and myself and management come up with is much more specific to DH and uses kind of our success or our downturns as the key metric and our recommendations.
Yeah, as Desi alluded to, this is our North Scottsdale market competitors, right? You guys know all of these clubs. And one of the things that they've been able to leverage with more flexible language in their CC&Rs or bylaws is multiple membership fee changes over the last couple of years, right? So Troon Country Club, they went from $65,000 to $150,000 through multiple changes, and that's an $85,000 increase. Desert Mountain, they went up about $100,000. Totally understand these aren't all apples to apples. The main picture is, hey, they've been able to capitalize on the demand for golf by raising their membership fees, and that gives us some room to maybe consider a language change to follow suit.
Yeah, one of the things all these clubs have, and again, that we understand the membership fees aren't necessarily apples to apples. Some have refundability. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But something all these clubs other than Desert Highlands have is their boards have more flexibility to move and change their initiation fees or their membership fees quickly in order to take advantage of the market and lower them as well. You know, it's not just increasing. We're talking about, obviously, we're in a market right now where we're talking about increasing, but if whatever number we had that we move to or that we're recommending that we move to is too high in the future based on our current bylaws, we wouldn't be able to lower them either. So it works both ways, and we just want to, again, be able to be dynamic as we see these changes in the market.
So what is the best wording to have guardrails but also be dynamic?
And that's a good point. So when Nick and I read our current CC&Rs, it's very evident to us having new sets of eyes on these bylaws that the community doesn't want the board to have, you know, too much power. Nick and I kind of call it the crawl, walk, run approach, right? Crawling is kind of what we're doing now, where it's very set, and again, there's no flexibility. The best practices that you see are other clubs in North Valley and a majority of clubs in the United States, they have where board has full discretion, and we'll call that kind of the running approach. And so what Nick and myself have discussed with management is really coming up with more of a walk approach, where we give the board some flexibility to move with these ebbs and flows in the market that we see, but we still put some guardrails on there because it seems like that's what the kind of the history of the association and the community would prefer.
So suggested wording of the CC&Rs that management is recommending, right? The amount of the membership fee will be between 4% and 8% of the median home sales price for the preceding 2 fiscal years. The board can update this fee with 60 days notice given to membership.
So again, why did we pick this wording? And we'll get into this a little bit more. But we started it, in a sense, we started with the numbers that we thought might work, right? We said, okay, where could we be within the market? We could be here on the low end, which is probably where we are right now. Here's maybe on the high end. If we were seeing, what we've seen in the market the past few years of where we could be. And we really started with the numbers, and based on what we saw when we input this into the system, we saw that this wording really works historically for this community. As we see these ebbs and flows in our median price, it really ebbs and flows really in line with the history of our median home price. Because we know there's accountants probably on here, there's people with great ideas, but we wanted to make sure that you understood that we did go back historically, look at this and see where it is. And Nick has this great slide on the screen, so you can see we went even further back than this, but this will take you back to at least 2003, where you'll be able to see kind of where that ebbs and flows. We're always within that 4 to 8%.
We also understand that everybody's home is a little bit different, right? Different footprint, different square foot, where you're located throughout the community. Are you on a golf hole? Are you not on the golf course? All of those kinds of variabilities, we wanted to filter out that information to kind of create the most democratic approach to where our home sales prices are going for the entire community and not just for a subset. So that's why we chose median home price, as well as when we look at this historic data, it allows the flexibility to match our competitors, right? So as our competitors are pricing themselves relative to the golf space, we can flex with that increase or decrease and be properly priced from a membership fee perspective, because that's our main financial driver, right? That's our ability to reinvest into the association and really drive those home prices up with new, fresh assets and entice new members to want to move into the community. So benefits of the suggested language, right? We're tying that membership fee to home values, right? So as members are going up or down in their home values, we can always change the membership fee. The board has the ability to change the membership fee to be reflective of the home sales or the home price values, right? Flexibility with guardrails. We understand that there's the crawl, walk, run, right? And so we want to be in that walk stage. We want to have the flexibility, but with some guardrails, but it allows the dynamic approach to pricing our membership fee and really being able to move it in a more dynamic nature.
And on top of that, it protects the community. Should we have home values decrease for some reason or economic factors, it would actually potentially require the board to lower the fees. So if we were too high, and we felt like we were a little out, the board would have to lower the fees, hopefully to help those sellers move their homes quicker. So again, we understand that was kind of the first. The CC&Rs is really our ask. We understood that's really the crux of this. We are going to get into the next phase of this presentation where we're going to talk about kind of the process that we go through in order to change these CC&Rs. what our or not the CC&Rs, excuse me, the membership fee, the process that we did go through, what our recommendations are, how that, why we think that's a great idea and why we think it'll be best for the community and for our current members. We are going to get into that. But what I really like to do right now is open it up for some questions or comments, concerns on, some of the concerns we heard yesterday was we don't really want the board to have that kind of flexibility and power. But we'd love to hear from you, any of those concerns or thoughts on the CC&Rs, where we currently are, maybe where we're thinking we'd like to go, and get some of your feedback. So before we move on. Not everybody at once. Feel free to unmute. Or feel free to put it in the chat box, or we can always wait till the end. So if there are no comments or anything on the CC&Rs, again, I just want to keep, as we go on and we move on to the next part of this presentation, just keep in mind, really the ask here is on the CC&Rs, and where those guardrails are is, we'll get into what those guardrails would show based on our current median home prices and et cetera, et cetera. Sorry, I feel like somebody just was.
Yeah, so this is Todd Duchesne.
Hi, Todd.
Lived in the community for a couple of years. But I apologize, I haven't had time to really review what's been said here, but it strikes me that the analysis on this, what I've seen so far, sort of mixes apples and pears. On the one hand, you want to talk like you're a golf club, and on the other hand, you want to talk like you're a neighborhood. And I think the thing that makes this club different is that you have people who live in the neighborhood are members, and people who are members live in the neighborhood. And that's unlike any of the 5 other golf clubs that I belong to around the country. And it seems like there's a lot of analysis here that's missing, and tying the golf membership to home sales and home prices just seems to me to be misguided, and taking a very, very disruptive time in both home sales, people moving to Arizona, that this analysis is really flawed, and it's flawed that could have disastrous effects down the road. Not to mention the fact that at some point the winds of all this could change, and the fact that to buy my home, you have to invest in the golf membership could be a drag. I mean, I think we're seeing the coalescence of things that may never happen again, which is the rise in everyone wanting to play golf, the rise in everyone wanting to be in Arizona, the impact of people wanting to be in Arizona and be in a golf club immediately. And this is just not well thought out from a long-term perspective. I mean, I get where you're coming from, and I think need more analysis, but this just strikes me as completely misguided.
Yeah, Todd, are you speaking of which aspect of it? Are you talking about giving the board discretion to be more dynamic when we do see ebbs and flows, or are you talking about the language itself? Like, can you give me?
Well, yeah. So I think it's always dangerous. I think it's always dangerous to take. And I happen to be a lawyer, by the way, so I think it's always dangerous.
We won't hold that against you.
Yeah, I think it's always dangerous to take bylaws that have been sitting around for 25 years and changing it for circumstances that are much shorter duration. I don't know how that's going to play out. But I do know that if the funding is, and not only that, I'd love to see the long-term historical funding situation, because it doesn't seem to me like we're in that difficult a funding scenario at this point. But in any event,
we'll get into that. Yeah.
In any event, pegging a golf club membership to the price of surrounding houses just strikes me as not logically sound.
It doesn't peg it to it. It gives the board the flexibility to go within those parameters. So
I
think we would agree with you. We agree with you. If we set a set parameter based on the saying, hey, it's 6% or something like that, I don't think Nick and I would agree with that. What we're trying to do is we're trying to give more flexibility to the board to ebb and flow with the markets more based on the information that we have, which I think I'm
But
slightly
what is
agreeing
the
with you and then
problem?
slightly disagreeing.
Yeah, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? I mean, what exactly is the problem that you're trying to solve?
Great question. So currently our bylaws, again, are very restrictive. Again, it requires a vote and we're at 95. And I think if you ask the community as a whole, I think a majority of the community would say 95 is not the number. But maybe 125, maybe 150, maybe 200 is the number, depending on who you ask. Currently the bylaws require us to go to a vote and whatever that number is and that we felt like it should be at, we vote on that. Now, similarly, to your point, if the houses drop, if they ebb and they flow, we'd have to go to a vote every time we wanted to move these. And what we see in other golf clubs, including, I'd say our sister club in Arizona that is an HOA and does have it tied is Forest Highlands. The board has full discretion there. So right now, again, there's no discretion. We're slow. And again, as those ebbs and flows happen, the board has no discretion to move those without a vote. So that's what what I'm trying to solve and what we're trying to solve here is just to put the community in the best place to protect itself. Because as Nick said, it's a very risky, it's our 100% of our current capital funding comes from this. And so to not be able to ebb and flow when you have 100% of your capital funding coming from this one space is just very risky and not, I think, where we would recommend the community be as your professionals.
But what is the current distress right now? Like, why couldn't you go out if you want to raise it, if you think you should raise it to 120, why not raise it to 120, have a vote? What is the particular issue now that makes you more fearful of this setup than you did last year or the year before? 2020 looks like it was the worst year in all this.
I don't know if it's fearful. We just, our jobs are to bring the best practices and to bring solutions. That just because we've done something a certain way for the last 40 years doesn't necessarily mean that's how we should continue. And so I think our jobs are to analyze the way we currently operate and our current financial systems and to give recommendations that we feel would be the best fit for the community going forward and protect the community going forward. So, but we'll get, Todd, thank you. Don't want to monopolize everything. We're going to get into some of the information you want with how our process is and how we got to that. Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. Appreciate it.
Can I ask you a quick question? This is Dan Barker.
Sorry, go ahead. Say again, Dan.
Dan Barker. I just had a quick question, and maybe I joined a couple minutes late. In terms of the percentage, then, are you talking about a dollar amount that's tied to the sale price of the house as a percentage, or are you still talking about full dollar amounts that are flat?
It'd be a flat amount that the board would be able to modify based on, but within those guidelines. And we're going to show you based on our current, 2 years. We're going to put this, our next phase of this presentation is we're going to show you kind of what the process would be based on the approval of these CC&Rs. And then get feedback again at the end and say, hey, based on that process, oh, that makes all the sense in the world. Okay, this seems great. Or, oh man, for me, that doesn't feel great. Again, this is really a feedback session where we again this is our recommendation to the board. But the board and management wanted to get the community's feedback because, again, to Todd's point, it is a change. It is different. And change at some point can be uncomfortable. And so that's the whole point of this. So yeah, thank you, Dan. We'll get into that and we'll show you exactly what that number would be now or what those numbers could be within this purview.
Hey, Desi, Guy Jackson, does anybody else, can you just tell us, does anybody else have our current model? I mean, how common is it from a best practice point of view?
I do not know of any club that requires a vote for their membership fee, initiation fee. I don't know of any. So I would say a vast majority, this is a total educated guess.
How many don't have? what you're joining.
This is a totally educated guess, but I would say 75% plus of, again, private clubs, HOA communities, the board has full discretion without guardrails. Nick, would you kind of, based on what you've seen in the benchmarking?
Yeah, I would say that typically the board has full flexibility in order to fund the capital income. And then members decide on the capital expenditure side of what gets reinvested into the community or golf club, whatever the nature is. So best practice would be let the board fund the community, and then on the expenditure side, let's make sure we're spending the money in the way that members feel like the money should be
On
spent.
major capital. Yeah, it's a great question, Guy. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's move on. Just a reminder, we did just change the CC&Rs a couple of years ago. We changed it from $75,000 to $95,000 back. And we had that $75,000 for about 20 years. So again, over those 20 years, it was set at 75. 2 years ago, we changed it to 95. And again, our recommendation, again, just to be dynamic and allow the board to change it up and down based on the economic factors that they see and the information they see within those guardrails. All right, let's move on. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on and keep the questions coming or type them in as you have them. And promise there'll be plenty of time at the end for question and answer of this.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
so what-
another question. Can I give you, and maybe you'll have this going forward, but given the recent inflation, do you have an expectation of what the current CC&Rs would provide the membership fee to be in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, that's asking us to solve for the unknown, which is where inflation's gonna go over the next few years. I would say that in today's dollars, we'd be around $127,000 initiation fee if we added the CPI of the last couple of years, since we increased it to $95,000. But I don't think we can solve for the unknown of what happens in 23, 24, 25 with inflation. All right, so let's talk about with the new updated language, what the process would be. So Joan, Desi, and myself would all collect the median, or we would collect the home sales prices for the last 2 fiscal years, right? So we're looking at 2 years worth of fiscal home sales for the association. So the microclimates that happen with home sales, with prices going up and down for a 3-month time frame, 6-month time frame, that's going to be weeded out with collecting 2 years worth of data. So we can really see over the last 2 years how the reflection of home prices have been through the entire community. Once we have that list of prices together of what homes have sold for, we're going to solve for the median. So right now in our community, that median price is right around $2.5 million. This isn't exact dollars. We've rounded it off to be a little bit more understanding in nature and have quick calculations that everybody can follow along with. But right now, it's reflective of our community. About the median home sales price is about 2.5 million. So now that we have the median home sales price, we're going to calculate the range that the board can work with between, right? So what are the guardrails? So at the 4% guardrail, the minimum membership fee would be $100,000. And at the maximum guardrail, we're looking at $200,000 membership fee. And so those are the guardrails that the board has to work within. So now that we have the guardrails, we're going to look at the additional data when coming to a consideration of what the membership fee should be. What is our competition charging for a similar golf product? What amount of capital cash is needed for the foreseeable future? What is the forecasted amount of capital income that's going to come from home sales? And what is the management team? We're going to get together with that data. We're going to look at all of those things as, you know, how much capital cash we need, what our competition is charging, and we're going to make a recommendation to the board and the finance committee about what we think the membership fee price should be. After that recommendation is made to the board, and should the board approve, notification is sent out to the community, and there's still a 60-day window of feedback before the new membership fee goes in place. And so the community can provide feedback, and if the board or management got it wrong, we can always adjust again, allow 60 more days of feedback, and then implement the new fee after that, right? We're not trying to, we want to make sure that anybody that's in escrow has that membership fee that they entered escrow with, but also that we're giving enough notification that if you're thinking about selling your home, then you still have a window of opportunity. Now, this is the minimum amount of time, right? This is just what the language says. The minimum amount of time is 60 days. The board may decide, hey, we want 6 months all the time. Or the feedback period may say, hey, we need additional time. That's totally fine. We're just putting in the 60-day language to let you know what the minimum amount of time would be with any of these membership fee changes into the future. So just going back to the wording, the membership fee is between 4 and 8% of the median home sales price for the preceding 2 fiscal years. We're looking at 2 years worth of data, not looking at these microclimates that happen within a year. 60-day notice to members, and it cannot descend or exceed 4 to 8%, right? Those are our guardrails. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what our recommendation is for the membership fee, walk you through the process of the actual data that we use in coming up with management's recommendation. So what are the factors we considered when determining the appropriate membership fee? Well, first off, let's look at the historic membership fee as a percentage of the median home price. Why would we not want to just go with 6%? Because that's been our average over the last 20 years. Well, we need to look at what our competition is charging, right? Pricing equals brand. And so as we're looking at the market, right now, we're at $95,000, and our next local competitor in the North Scottsdale market's at $150,000.
And we understand that this is not apples to apples. A few things I just want to make comment on. Troon and Desert Mountain, they are fully non-refundable. So they are very similar models to us from a club standpoint. To Todd's point, they don't have the homes in the community there. Mirabelle, Estancia, and Silverleaf all have a refundable portion of theirs, and DC Ranch is full market based. So we understand that. We also understand that all of these other clubs are just clubs. They don't have the HOA, they don't have the roads, they're not responsible for those aspects. So their HOA fees and their capital reserves for their HOA are completely separate from what they're collecting here. And I will also mention that all of these clubs to a T, and again, when you benchmark and you look at best practices, every club out there does have a component of capital dues to them to help fund their old assets, their replacement of their current assets, their depreciation, et cetera. So we're great value, I guess is what I'm saying is at 95,000, we're a great value. And you get to play golf the very next day that you close on your home.
So again, just looking at what the competition has done over the last 2 years, right? So they've been able to be more dynamic, capitalize on some golf demand, and yeah. So what amount of capital cash is needed, right? So our capital expenditure planning. When we look up the upcoming capital requirements, we really break these into 2 major categories, right? We have obligatory capital, which is sometimes the things that you don't see on a day-to-day basis. So maintenance of, golf course maintenance equipment, $3 million in golf course maintenance equipment, kitchen equipment, $1 million in kitchen equipment, HVAC units. The big unknown right now is drainage, right? And we also have 12 miles worth of road throughout the community. So these are things that members don't think about. And the cost for these items is basically about $2.8 million per year, right? As our assets age, we need to make sure to reserve that cash to plan for our replacement of those assets. And so when we're looking at how does our $95,000 cover that $2.8 million per year, right? Well, that equates to about 30 home sales. On average, the community has had 28 home sales per year, right? And so we need 2 over our average in order to cover just the annual aging of assets. And so when we go back and look at our membership sales data that we showed you at the beginning, when 40% of the community has changed hands, or 40% of the homes have been sold in the last 5 years, there's significant risk in the fact that moving forward, we need 30 home sales to cover those aging assets.
And another point, again, and it might not be a big number, but our asset study was done pre-COVID. So although we have included some increases annually to that, this doesn't include what we've seen in inflation in the last 2 years. So some of these numbers probably could be a little bit higher than the 2.8, 2.9, and 3 million that you see.
Yeah, and I don't think what we're talking about is we want to be able to fund those assets, right? So that we don't have to come out to the current members, keep true to history, and allow the membership fee to work so that we can fund those assets without having to come to members every time that we need to replace a mower on the golf course, or we need to replace a oven in the kitchen. You know, making sure that we're funding that depreciation to replace those assets as they come due. So the other category of capital expenditure will be our aspirational capital, or the fun things that we want to do that increase the member experience, right? So we've had a significant amount of home sales that have allowed us to invest, roughly $5 million back into the association with bocce ball, a Jack's backyard, pickleball, right? And so we want to make sure that we're communicating what projects are coming up from an aspirational capital standpoint, right? So we have the racket club enhancement that's going to happen this summer. We're testing Zoysia on holes number 1 and 18. Next year, we're looking at a lower clubhouse remodel and what that means. And there's a committee of members associated with that project. Putting course renovation and golf course renovation are coming up in 24 and 25. And so those are some of our aspirational needs.
And just to simplify it a little bit, not, kind of use more layman's terms, the obligatory capital, in a sense, is stuff we already have. So as things get old and they break and they just are done with their useful life, like your air conditioner unit at your house or this or that, the obligatory capital, that 2.8, 2.9 that you see at the top, that funds replacement of the stuff in a sense that we already have. And that's our biggest concern, right? Nick's and my biggest concern is just the fact that we want to continue to be able to fund our obligatory capital, our stuff that we already have. When it breaks, we want to be able to replace it. Our aspirational capital, again, that's the things that are kind of coming down the line. Those are, if we really understand how our depreciation works, how our membership fee works, that number one thing that we're talking about, then we can plan better for this community and set the community better up to really understand our aspirational capital as well and our new stuff. That new stuff, for the most part, again, the big stuff, you're still going to get to vote on. Golf course renovation, the major projects, et cetera, because we're only able to spend a certain amount based on the CC&Rs on our capital every year. And what we're allowed to spend really simply covers our depreciated assets.
So looking at the 5-year capital expenditure plan, sometimes graphs and charts are better, right? So we're looking at the cumulative amount of capital expenditures over the next 5 years. And we have roughly $15 million worth of obligatory capital, or those things that we just talked about, the mowers, the blowers, all that kind of stuff that is used in day-to-day operations that the association needs to cover in the next 5 years. So that's the maintenance capital, right? Our roads, the drainage. The big unknown is drainage right now. And we're working on that study to understand what possibly needs to be added from a drainage perspective to our 5-year capital expenditure plan. We should have more details on that by the end of the month, and then we can communicate with the community and let you know more about what the engineers are saying with our drainage. So now we add in the aspirational capital needs to come to a cumulative capital expenditures. Some of you may have attended Curtis's presentation and heard about the golf course renovation project. In that presentation, he shares how much the current forecast is based on the scope of the project. And so roughly $8 million for that project. But when you combine aspirational and the obligatory, you come to a cumulative balance of about $25 million that needs to be spent over the next 5 years. So the question is, how does the community generate capital cash? Well, we generate capital cash right now only through the membership fee, right? And so when we're looking at capital reserve planning, we're really talking about the three-step approach again, right? Looking at the membership fee, understanding what flexibility is there or what that membership fee is going to be, considering recurring capital dues and possible assessment down the road. Just being transparent about the next steps in the process after we understand where the membership fee is going to be.
And this is why our recommendation in this change to the CC&Rs we feel like is so critical. Because again, as the board is flexible and we're able to be dynamic in our changing, we're able to maximize the amount of transfer fee, membership fee that we have when homes are sold. And if we can do that, then number 2 and number 3 are lower. If we're able to maximize that membership fee, the people who are currently living here, we're able to make sure that their dues in general are as low as possible and that the assessments are as low as possible. So that's our goal here, is to change these CC&Rs, allow that board to be dynamic for the betterment of those who live in the community.
So I was just going to ask a question. I wanted to compare the last chart, which was the obligatory capital expenditure forecast versus what the forecast is for the membership.
We're getting there.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, so 5-year capital income forecast. So what you're looking at here is our expected home sales from 2023 to 2027, 128 home sales at $95,000. We get to about $12.5 million worth of capital income. So when we combine that, to Todd's point, with the obligatory capital as well as the aspirational capital, what you can see is our blue line, which is our capital income, has a gap not only between our obligatory capital, but also, with the aspirational capital. So when there's this gap, what happens, right? The association has 3 choices: impose assessments on current members, seek additional financing from the bank, or defer maintenance and improvement. So if the CC&Rs are changed, what fee is management recommending? Management's recommending $175,000 membership fee. So why not 150, right? And so looking back at that analysis of our capital income versus our expected expenditures over the next 5 years, you'll see that at $150,000, we're now exceeding our obligatory capital needs, right? But there's still a significant gap with between that and our aspirational needs.
So again, keep in mind, there's several different aspects that we're looking at here. We're also looking at our brand. Our brand's really important. When you go back to that 175, it puts us slightly above the other 2 clubs that are fully non-refundable without the HOA component. It puts us below a few others. And so there is a branding aspect where we feel like in the market, we can hold this number really well. Joan will be able to speak to what we feel like this would do to home values, home prices, home sales here at the end as well. But from a branding standpoint, we feel like this is a great number. And if you go back to that 150, Nick, what you'll see is the more that we can get that blue line up, again, the less that we have to assess should a major project go through. the less we'd have to assess or fund in other ways for these kind of major projects. The 150 would be fine. The 150 from the would cover us from a obligatory capital as well, but we feel like from the brand and from a market, we can go to 175 and really maximize where we are in the market currently. And with this change in the CC&Rs, if we see the market come back, it would give the board they'd be able to be dynamic and they'd be able to move that fee back to 150, 140, 130, whatever we feel like we are, what the market would bear very quickly. And so again, that's the main ask is in that CC&Rs where we're able to capitalize when we see the markets doing good things, and we're able to pull it back when we need to help maximize that blue line.
So a little bit about the timeline right now, you know, this week we're working on the forums, and with that feedback, we'll either host some additional forums, but we're also going to send out the video presentation to the entire membership with the frequently asked questions, with the video, so that they can walk through the presentation on their own time and really get an understanding of all the components that we're talking about. We're hoping to open voting by the end of May so that we can get a CC&R legal update by June 30th. And then the increased potential membership fee would be put in as of September 1st. So plenty of time for those who are thinking about putting their house on the market or are currently in escrow to have that transaction happen without the increased fee.
So right now, we'd love to open up for questions. We're sure there's plenty of them. Again, this is a feedback session where I think what's really important, we're not trying to shove anything down the community's throats. We're coming with our recommendations and hopefully the reasons why behind it. You might like the CC&Rs, but not like our number. You might hate the CC&Rs and like our number. There could be things in between. And so as you ask questions today, we really appreciate we're taking notes and but also as you have time to sleep on it, feel free to email myself, Nick, Joan, any of your feedback as you have time to digest it, because we're not interested in going out to a vote. Obviously getting 560 plus people to agree on anything is going to be impossible, but we'd really like to make sure that at least the majority of the community feels comfortable with where we want to go before we recommend a vote. So it is open for questions and feedback.
We have one chat, does
Oh,
he?
thank you. Let's see.
yeah.
John has asked, has an analysis been done that takes into account the change in demand for homes due to the price of membership? Would sales change both demand and home price if we were at 200,000 membership? Joan, you want to take that?
You know, I don't think so. There's a couple things that our prices are holding. The North Scottsdale market, the Cromford report, which is a report that's done on a regular basis of our real estate market in particular, is showing that home prices are holding, if not increasing. As a matter of fact, if you look at this time last year and right now, the Cromford report is actually showing an increase in home prices. I think that our home prices have held and if not gone up because of all the great things that we've done. We have people that are looking at Desert Mountain or Silverleaf, in some cases DC Ranch, as our comp set, in some cases Mirabelle. And right now, because of the waitlist demand in all of those clubs, they're actually seeking homes in those communities that only have a membership, which is then causing those home prices to be higher values because they have a membership associated just like we do. So we feel that it is a very solid market still and do not see any foreseen issues in this area. The other piece of it is these folks that are looking at Desert Highlands are also looking at those clubs that are at 200, 175, 300, 400,000. So we feel that we're still within the range that would not affect any home sales.
Thank you, John. Great question.
Hey, Desi, sort of a follow-up to that question. For the putting aside DC Ranch, which is market run, how much is if you were trying to forecast what you'll ever get back at like Estancia and some of the Desert Mountain, some of these other ones. Is it really anywhere? Are we still quite competitive? Because I would think we are, going up to some higher level, 150, 175, whatever it is the board
Yeah.
decides.
And again, Nick, I don't know if we know for sure. I believe I've heard that at Silverleaf, you get $200,000 back. At Desert Mountain and Troon, you get nothing back. So those are non-refundable, so you wouldn't get any of that money back. I believe at Estancia, you get $60,000 back. So yeah.
So we're still quite
right there.
competitive. The bottom line is we still would look competitive against them, even if somebody wants to factor in a refund portion.
100%. Mirabelle's at 200,000 as an example, and they have to pay 140,000 transfer fee, so they only get 60 back, so it's still comparable.
And again, Mirabelle, just keep in mind, when Mirabelle, all these clubs, as they take it, 12 miles worth of road, and the other aspects that are not part of their purview, the de-veg, the other aspects that the HOA has from a capital side are not part of their initiation fee. But they are part of ours in our current financial model.
Well, I think that's a very important point, because we do have a road reserve up, and it already for $1 million, and we could have more needs down the road. So to call us comparable to a golf downstroke is somewhat of a stretch, because go up the Desert Mountain, you're going to have a hell of a lot of roads to pave in some point in time, and they're starting to age out. So I think we end up, in my opinion, with a good value. And I think we need to come up with a model that gives the board more flexibility, that's more dynamic, and be thoughtful about it, but don't handcuff ourselves and effectively leave money on the table that we could rightly have and would be competitive in having it. One man's opinion.
Thank you, Guy. Todd, you had some questions earlier, but anybody have some questions? Don't be shy to unmute yourself. Anybody? We'll know even if somebody else is talking, if you unmute, we'll be able to see you and call on you.
This is just a suggestion. I think the 2 slides that show the income and the expenditures for just keeping the roads is what ought to be led with here. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to live in a neighborhood that's deteriorating and not being kept up, but I think that may be the point. How you go about it, I guess there's some, you can have a disagreement, but I think that's the crux of the issue here, I think.
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, that one that shows kind of our revenue shortfall to the actual depreciated asset, the money that we need in order to fund, we'll maybe add that more in the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good feedback. Well, if there's Guy, you got another one?
Well, I would just add too, I think the fact that the break even for our basic stuff in terms of number of home sales, the fact that number has gone up and it's above our average is another factor that says that we should be raising our membership fee to cushion against that. So I think we need to look at the total big pictures and all our funding, and be flexible and we give a lot of, we elect good board members and we give a lot of responsibility to them. They're homeowners too. So I think they'll listen to all of us and they will act responsibly, in my opinion.
I have found that to be the case. I said it yesterday and I'm not just blowing smoke. We have a great board, very thoughtful. And again, with 560 homeowners, we're not always going to agree. It's just, it's impossible within a club community like this, but they take the information and are a very facts-based board. And so, yeah, you are in very good hands. Well, again, thank you, everybody. It doesn't look like, oh, Dan, you have a question?
No, I've had a little bit of feedback maybe, and I don't know if you
Yeah,
have
please.
anybody else.
Thank you.
It just seems the band, I mean, 4 to 8 is a little wide. I don't know if anybody else has thought that, but yeah, 5 to 7 or something, I guess. Looks like we've been around 6 through history, or, you know, I don't know what the average would have been, but probably high 5s or something like that. But it just seems to me that, yeah, on a $3 million house, it could be 120, it could be 240, depending on the board's discretion. But I mean, I'd echo what Guy says. I think, you know, the board.
No,
board
thank
seemed
you.
to be
That's
great here, and they'll do the right thing. But just seems a little wide, I guess.
no, that's great feedback, and that's one of those purviews where we feel like that number works, because I wouldn't probably go higher than 4, just because you probably want to give the board the discretion to lower it, you know, quickly, or to that percent, depending on what home prices are. But if that's what we want to know too, are members uncomfortable with 8? Because right now, with the way the home sales are, it would go to 200 potentially. Not that we would recommend that, and not that I think the board would ever approve that. It does give them flexibility to do that if there were certain things in the market. But that's great feedback. Thank you. All right, well, as you have time to sleep on this, if there's nobody else is unmuting themselves. So if you have time to sleep, feel free, like I said, email Nick, email myself, Joan. We're consolidating all the feedback. And again, the ask here, I want to leave this with it. The ask here is really on the CC&R change. You know, we're really asking that you trust management and give that board some flexibility within these guardrails to be able to do what's best for this community. And again, take advantage when the market's showing us what the market's showing us over the past few years. And then again, allow the board to lower it quickly when we potentially see changes in the market that aren't necessarily in our favor. So I really appreciate it. Thank you to Nick and Joan. Thank you all for taking the time. And if you do have questions that come up in the next little bit, feel free to let us know. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.